Right, good morning. Good morning, everyone. My name's Maurice Millar, and this is my presentation about the fifth Scottish colourist, John Maclauchlan Milne, which I've entitled The Missing Colourist. My presentation today is in three parts. I want to end by leaving you with an impression of the artist in the words of those who knew him. The middle section is about Maclauchlan Milne's time on Arran, but I'll begin with details of his earlier career. Milne was 54 years old in the summer of 1940, when I reckon he moved to live on Arran. He'd been a professional artist living in Dundee for over 30 years, and each of those decades was different. Here's the summary timeline of his life. As a child, he lived with his family in Edinburgh. He was the eldest of four children. His father, Joseph Milne, Joe, was a landscape artist, as was his uncle, William Watt Milne. 1903 was a critical year. His father was declared bankrupt, and Joe Milne took his family to London to re-establish his career. But Maclauchlan Milne did not go with them. Instead, he emigrated to Canada in June 1903 at the age of 17, almost 18. On the passengers list, his occupation is shown as artist. His final destination was given as Winnipeg, Manitoba. He returned to the UK about 4 years later to join his family in London. There's no artwork known from his time in Canada, but he told stories of working as a cowboy or cowpuncher. His earliest paintings are from London in about 1908. He was painting in the same style as his father, and this continued for the next 10 years. Here are two examples. Joe Milne on the left, Maclauchlan Milne on the right. View of Strand on the Green, Chiswick, is one of Maclauchlan Milne's earliest known paintings. The Strand on the Green is on the side of the River Thames, downriver from Kew Bridge, underlined here in red. At this time, the Milne family was living in the district of Gunnersbury, just to the north of this map extract. Late in 1908 or early 1909, Joe Milne decided to return with his family to Scotland, settling in Dundee. Father and son were painting in Perthshire and Fife in the summer of 1909, and a joint exhibition and sale of their paintings was held in Dundee in November 1909. Joe Milne died in January 1911. Later that year, Maclauchlan Milne married in July 1911, and he and his wife Winifred continued living in Dundee, and he painted in the surrounding countryside. Here's a pair of typical paintings from the period before Milne was called up to join the Royal Flying Corps in January 1917. After initial training in the UK, Milne was sent to northern France in April 1917, and he would remain there until the end of the war, finally returning from France to Dundee in June 1919. There are a few works from this time, watercolours from Normandy and sketches from near Ypres in Belgium. His style was to change dramatically when he returned to France in 1920, initially to Paris and also to the Loire Valley. The picture on the left is from near Lavardin in the Loire Valley. From 1924 until about 1931, he made annual painting trips to France, to the Côte d'Azur. The picture on the right is from L'Estaque, which is a coastal village near Marseille. This was exhibited at the Society of Scottish Artists in 1930. This map shows the Côte d'Azur. I'm showing Marseille, Toulon, and Nice for reference. All these other locations are subjects of Maclauchlan Milne's named paintings from the period 1924 to about 1931. You see that on his painting trips to the Côte d'Azur, he roamed from L'Estaque near Marseille in the west to St. Paul de Vence and Carros near Nice in the east. The Wall Street crash of October 1929 and the following economic recession changed the art market and the demand for new paintings. After all his painting trips to France, he made one painting trip to Tuscany in the spring of 1930. This seems to have been one of his last continental trips. Of the various solo exhibitions of Milne's paintings in commercial galleries, the highlight of his career may have been his solo show at the Independent Gallery in London in March 1931. His painting was to change again, and in the 1930s, he painted in Scotland, travelling extensively throughout the Highlands and Islands, from Durness in Sutherland to Arran, including Skye and Iona. And finally, we get to Arran, and specifically to the area around the village of Corrie. As part of his painting trips in the 1930s, there is early evidence of Milne visiting Arran. These two dated paintings are from 1932 and again from 1934. However, the stream of Arran pictures began in 1939. His studio exhibition in Dundee in April 1940, probably his last exhibition in Dundee, included scenes of Arran and Iona. My best guess is that Milne finally left Dundee in the summer of 1940 and to live in Arran. Initially, he lived at a boarding house in Corrie. He would meet Elsie, his second wife, there, and later they lived at a cottage in High Corrie called Sea View. Milne does not seem to have travelled far to find landscapes to paint on Arran. Here are some of his favourite locations. The next few slides show examples of Arran paintings where the titles indicate the locations. One difference in Milne's paintings of Arran compared to his earlier work is that relatively few of them are dated. Also, he held annual studio exhibitions in Dundee, and these were promoted in the local press. I've found no evidence of such organised events during his time on Arran. This is one of houses in Corrie. The Art UK website has 37 pictures by Maclauchlan Milne, which are held in public collections throughout the UK. Of these 37, 9 are landscapes from Arran. Milne painted several versions of Sannox Bay. This one from 1942 or earlier. A later version was part of a British Council travelling exhibition in the USA and Canada in 1949-1950. Another local favourite landscape was Glen Sannox, this one from 1941. And another version of the same view. Milne exhibited annually throughout his career at the exhibitions of the Royal Scottish Academy, of the Royal Glasgow Institute of the Fine Arts, for some years with the Society of Scottish Artists, and briefly at the Walker Gallery in Liverpool. This painting, Ceir Mhor Arran, was exhibited at the Royal Glasgow Institute in 1939, and then again at the Royal Scottish Academy in 1940. Virtually all his future exhibits were landscapes from Arran. This is a view on his doorstep in High Corrie. Jimmy McKellar is John Maclauchlan Milne's nephew. He's a great enthusiast for his uncle's paintings, and he remembers him warmly from family holidays at High Corrie. Those holiday memories are of parties with bright people, friends and visitors, and lively discussions on all sorts of topics. And another view on his doorstep in High Corrie. If we compare High Corrie, painted sometime in the 1940s or 50s, with Lestat, painted in the late 1920s, we can see that there is no distance between Arran and the Côte d'Azur. In the eyes of the artists, they're both bursting. Milne was keen to be accepted by the Royal Scottish Academy. He was elected associate in 1933. This formal portrait is undated, but it was probably taken to mark his election as a full member of the RSA in February 1937, when he was 51 years old. The links to Peploe and Cézanne were included in his obituary in the RSA annual report for 1957. Their cottage in High Corrie had few home comforts, and they left Arran in the last months of his life. John Maclauchlan Milne, RSA, died on 28th October 1957 at his wife's brother's family home in Greenock. Today, Milne is still remembered as a charmer, even in old age. Enid Gauldie's husband, Sinclair Gauldie, knew Milne as a child in Dundee. Another quote from his RSA obituary: "A warm and lovable personality, universally popular." He was strikingly handsome. Sinclair Gauldie was an architect in Dundee, as was his father. Sinclair's parents were friends of Maclauchlan Milne and his first wife, Winifred. Sinclair organised the centenary Maclauchlan Milne exhibition in Dundee in 1985, and this quotation is from his exhibition notes. Maclauchlan Milne and George Leslie Hunter each had solo exhibitions in the same gallery in Dundee in 1921. Later, in a letter in March 1955, Milne remembered his good friend Leslie Hunter. Milne is remembered today as a talented, cheerful, gregarious, handsome uncle. Milne had a pronounced stammer. However, in the annual report of the Dundee Arts Society, there is a record that Mrs. Stuart Carmichael and Mr. Maclauchlan Milne rendered Hebridean songs. Similarly, Elsie McKellar Milne's sister Marion remembered Milne's word-perfect renditions of Gilbert and Sullivan songs. So his stammer did not limit his singing. She described him as a man of high principles, a man of quality. John Maclauchlan Milne was doing the same thing in some of the same places, sometimes at the same times, as those who would later become known as the Scottish colourists. He has left a light footprint on history, other than his extensive legacy of paintings. For that reason, I've called my illustrated biography of Maclauchlan Milne The Missing Colourist, and I hope that this can be published someday. Thank you. That concludes my presentation.